Hello and welcome back to the Soul Care Intuitive podcast. I'm so excited for today's episode. I have my friend Alicia here who is going to talk all things wellness, healing your body, healing your mind, and stepping into your spiritual gifts. Alicia, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I want to get started with your story of your illness and how it came into your life, what happened, and then what led you to find your spiritual gifts. So if you would tell the audience about that.
All right. Yes, so about 4 years ago, um, I started to experience just overwhelm, and I did get sick very often, just regular colds. And then I ended up getting COVID, and that kind of started off along a chronic illness journey.
Hmm.
Um, And so when I first got sick, I still functioned in regular life for about a year, even though I knew something was wrong.
Right.
And that's when a friend of mine told me that she thought I was an empath. And I had never even heard of that word before.
Okay.
And so I thought, oh, that's interesting. But just kind of let it go. And then I ended up getting another virus, and that kind of put me on the couch for a year and a half.
Oh, wow.
So I was couch bound with 15 symptoms when I count them. Mostly a lot of stomach upset and extreme fatigue was what was debilitating. Um, and so right from the beginning of really being couch bound at home, I started to journal and just really look within, and that began my spiritual journey.
Wonderful.
So that friend gave me a book, yeah, a book on what an empath is. And so I read that and everything just clicked and was like, oh my gosh, that's what I can't believe that I've never known this before. And so that kind of started the spiritual path. And from there, I started listening to Psychic Teachers, that podcast. I saw my first soul healer for the first time. I
Okay.
had never heard of energy work, soul work. I had never heard of any of that. And so, when you're deathly sick, you try everything.
Absolutely.
And so I saw this, yes, I saw this healer who was so amazing. She did energy work and she spoke to my guides and she gave me guidance from my guides. That was my first time I heard about guides. And I thought, so that guidance she gave me was the most helpful out of it was just like a soul level, really wonderful guidance. And so from there, I thought, wow, how does she do that? How does she talk to my guides? And so started to learn to talk to my guides, and it's such interesting stuff when you haven't heard of it
Yep, I
first.
completely
And
agree.
it
It's
just
it's
starts,
amazing.
yes. And it started to really open up just a lot, spiritually. And it started to give me hope and know that there is more outside of myself and know that I was connected. And so through basically, I was sick for 3 years. And I will say that a lot of my healing was through some mind body work.
Okay.
Um, and that really helped a lot of physical ailments through the mind body work. But on a spiritual level, I really feel like I transformed like into a new butterfly with
Oh, that's
with all of the
beautiful.
spiritual work. And yes, and so then I also got my Reiki certification through that journey, and that really opened up a lot for me. And then I went on to I took months in between, but I went on to get Reiki 2 and then my master's. And each of those attunements really opened up um, my spiritual gifts
Hmm.
and um yes.
So while you're sick and you're ill, you never thought about anything spiritually. Your friend kind of brought it up to you. Do you think that that was kind of like your spirit guides giving you that kind of nudge that you needed to move into that space? A lot of my audience, we talk about how there's coincidences and then how there's synchronicities and how things come into our lives. Do you believe that that friend coming to talk to you to say, "Hey, you're an empath," was your spirit guides kind of leading you down a path you were supposed to be on?
Yes, definitely. And it's interesting also because that friend moved, like we saw each other once that summer when I was starting to not feel well, and I actually haven't seen her since just because she moved. And so it's, yeah, a little magical when you think of it that way.
Absolutely.
Went we went tubing on a river, and then she actually mailed me the book, the empath book, and we just haven't kept in touch just because of distance. So it was kind of like a little angel friend that dropped that into my life. And yes, I'm so thankful just for that friend and that book to start off this journey.
Could you tell us what book it is?
No, I'm sorry, but I don't remember the name of the first one, but I would like to say that then I read Lisa Campion's Healing, Energy Healing for Empaths.
Yes, that's an
And
amazing book.
that,
Yes.
yes. And then that book, I use a lot of the tools from that book to through my healing journey and now still.
Okay, that's amazing. Now, a lot of my content, because this is what happened to me, I never had a spiritual experience with spirit guides or anything like that, Reiki, none of that until I was in my middle, almost 40, area of life. And so a lot of
Mhm.
my followers are in the same situation where they've never had a spiritual experience, and then all of a sudden later in life they have one. Can you talk about how that kind of changed your life to where one day you didn't really understand what an empath was, and then the next day all of a sudden it's taking you up to be a Reiki master? Can you talk about how that affected your life since it came in later?
Oh, yes, definitely. Let's see. Well, at first for me, the spiritual opening, I think, was learning that I have spirit guides and starting to speak to them myself.
Mhm.
And so the very first time I decided to ask for guidance if they were there. I do live in the forest, and so animals and nature are like my signs. But I just asked for a sign, like a without a doubt sign. And I laid, I think it was the next day, I laid down on my bed feeling really awful. And our door was open. Our screen door was, it was just our screen door. And a
Mhm.
hummingbird came and just, but like literally flew and stared at me. And then it poked its beak through the screen door like it was trying to get to me.
Oh, wow.
And to me, that was, I just knew that was my sign, like the first time that I believed. And it felt so magical.
Hmm.
And since then, sometimes it can be confusing, like, is this my
Yeah,
sign? But usually it's just, I just know. And so from there, it kind of started to, I just started to believe, which is I feel like that kind of takes a little time, like a muscle
yeah,
to
I agree.
believe. And that hummingbird all summer, I laid outside a lot. Like I just laid inside, laid outside, and many moments of very strong doubt that I would ever get better. That hummingbird would just come and buzz like right by my face. And that gave me so much hope. And I think that I needed that hope to heal. So that is what started the connection of, believing in something outside of me. And it also really helped to know that I was loved and guided, even if I didn't feel like I was here in the
That's really
human
important.
form.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love
And
how you talk about that when you saw the hummingbird, you felt it and you just knew. I feel like a
Hmm.
lot of us, we see those signs and we blow them off, we brush them off. But it's really about going inward. Would you agree about going inward and feeling what you feel when you see these signs, like the magic that you felt?
Yes, definitely. And I really learned that was a it kind of meshed together, like learning that I was an empath and then starting to learn to listen to my own energy and like, asking, is this emotion mine or not mine?
Right,
Also taught me to know what was my emotion. And then through learning that muscle of listening to my own inner wisdom also helped me to trust my gut feelings when there's a sign from my guide.
right.
And yeah, it really builds, I feel like, your inner power feeling when you start to know how to trust those sensations.
Yes, I completely agree. Do you have any other stories about your spirit guides communicating with you or how you felt them or knew that they were around?
Yes. I started to meditate, which was helpful for speaking to my guides because at first I felt like I didn't know how. And especially from that soul healer, she just closed her eyes and got all these messages. And I felt like I can't do that. But then I started to meditate and practice Reiki.
Hmm.
And through those times, along with, listening to my own inner wisdom, I would just ask questions and start to learn if the thought was kind of my guide's answer or my answer. So through meditation, I started to like build that muscle.
Right.
And then one fun story that felt really magical, I started to get a lot of feathers for signs that were very clear, like very clear feather signs. And so when I started to heal, I knew I wanted to open my own healing business. But, still it was scary and like, should I do this? Should I not? And so I said like a really deep prayer saying, could you please send me a without a doubt feather sign if I should open this business? And in a few days later, that morning, I walked outside and like, so we have just a grass yard and
Hmm.
we do have trees, but they're not by our yard. And
Right.
there was no dead bird, there was no nests anywhere around, but the whole grass was had feathers and it was just like it snowed.
Oh my
Like
gosh.
I know it was like sprinkled all around the grass, like not in one section. It was magical. And I just like, knew it was like I knew it was my sign and it was very magical.
Oh my gosh. That is amazing. That is a wonderful story.
Yes.
So you do talk
Hmm.
about becoming a Reiki master. Can you talk to us about what made you want to do Reiki and then what made you want to take it all the way to the master level?
Yeah, it's interesting. I heard about Reiki probably 8 years ago and didn't know what it was. And then I heard about it again. I feel like very much at the perfect time. That's
Yeah,
another one of those synchronicities.
absolutely.
I had been listening, yes, I had been listening to the Psychic Teacher podcast, and that day I just decided to scroll way back in the archives and I came across their podcast on what Reiki is. And for some reason, the way she said it, it just clicked with me like, wow, that sounds really interesting. And so I found Lisa Campion's Reiki 1 class and took it. And it's really I do feel like was my guides just putting it there at that moment. And when I took Reiki 1, it was so empowering that, I could practice Reiki. Like it
Yes.
seems like something that only special people, healers can do. And so that was really empowering. And through my journey, I needed to get my own power back. That was a big piece of healing. And
Absolutely.
so, yes. And so that first Reiki attunement, after that, I had, all these magical dreams and I started to practice on myself. And so it really soothed me a lot. So that became my daily self practice
Mhm.
for soothing myself and also really was like taking my own power back. Like I can do this on myself. And that was a big deal.
Absolutely,
And
yes.
so then yes. So then from there I just thought it was fascinating and magical and I was excited to keep learning. And took Reiki too and started to practice on others and then I will say when I got my master's attunement, that really, it just really aligned me with the divine and Mother Earth. And
Mhm.
it's like a sense of grounding and love and peace have really been with me since the master's attunement.
And I know that you offer healing
And
services because you're very amazing at what you do. So is Reiki the core of your healing services, or what else do you include? What do you do?
yes, and that is what I was going to say next is that then once I started to practice on others, I just saw the transformational magical powers and it's so wonderful to share it with others. And so I offer long distance Reiki healing and then I also offer mind body coaching.
Okay,
And
that's
so
amazing.
those are the two that I offer and I enjoy them both.
Awesome. I love that. I want to take it back for just a second. How you mentioned that you had thought that it's just for the special or only certain, maybe gurus can have these magical, special psychic Reiki abilities. And I talk a lot about that in the two books that I wrote and a lot about that on this channel as someone who, my audience knows my opinion, so I want to get someone else's, as someone who never had those experiences, and then all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, we're all born with this ability. We all have spirit guides. We all can connect to this magic. How does that make you feel knowing that?
Makes me feel like I'm a magical being and empowered. The
Yeah,
empowerment piece I feel like is huge and that I'm connected. Like that sense of empowerment and connection is, I mean, I feel like will carry me through the rest of my life. Like, and it gets me through my days and it gets me through hard times. And um, I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, I felt the exact same way. Most of my life, I felt alone, or I felt like everything was against me. And when I opened up to these psychic abilities and realized, wait, we all have spirit guides with us. We're never alone. We all have angels. We all have this ability to connect to the divine, this ability to call in magic into our lives. It really like blew open a whole new dimension, if you will, for me about who we really
Mhm.
are as people and as souls. But for you, especially
Yeah.
because it showed you that you can heal yourself, you can heal your body, you can use
Mhm.
that magic to help you heal. Would you agree with that?
Mhm. Yes, definitely. And it's so hard when you're, sick in general and I feel like in general in life we often will look outside of ourselves for the answers and it can be so just discouraging. And so, yes, taking that power back and knowing that I am divine and I can connect to these powers is very empowering and life-giving.
Absolutely. I love that you talk about giving your power back and not looking outside of you for the answers. I think as a society, we're programmed to do that. We're programmed to look outside of us for love, look outside of us for acceptance, look outside of us for healing, when in reality, we have all of that inside of us from the moment we're born. We can already have those things. So I love that you talk about that. Now, before we wrap this up, is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience about your journey, about healing, any other stories? And if not, share with us how my audience can get in contact with you to have an amazing reading with you.
Thank you. I think just the last thing I'll say about learning that I'm an empath is um, that it's okay to say no. I really learned boundaries and learning how to, check in with yourself and setting boundaries is wonderful. I like, self-care and self-love, really helps everyone. And so that was, a transformational piece. And then also kind of along with that, learning that, I read people's energies very well and
Yeah.
easily, and transforming that being a problem into being a healing aspect is um, also empowering, which I feel like is a good message for anyone who's an empath, because I know it can feel draining to read others' energies so well, but it is possible to set boundaries and to use it as a gift.
Absolutely. I agree. So how
Yes.
can they get in touch
And
with you? How can they book with you?
yeah, so my website is Vibrant Energy Healing LLC, and I have a Facebook business page which is Vibrant Energy Healing. And my business Facebook page is okay, but my website is the best place. You can email me, and it's pretty easy to book an appointment on there. And I also have a free 30-minute discovery call if anyone would like to just see if we are a good match.
You absolutely have to book that discovery call. Alicia is amazing. I will put all of the links to her website, to her Facebook down below in the description, or if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, I'll put it in the show notes. Alicia, thank you so much for being on this podcast. I would love to have you back someday if you would love to come back.
Yes, that would be amazing. Thank you so much
Absolutely.
for having me on. It's so fun to talk about this stuff, and I just want to share it with everyone.
I feel the same way. It's so fun to talk about and I love sharing it. Thank you so much for being on our podcast. To those of you who are new here, do remember to subscribe, leave us some comments. We can share them with Alicia so she can answer any questions that you have. And do remember to follow the show and I'll see you in the next episode of the Soul Care Intuitive podcast. Bye everyone.